Counsel's name is Miss Patterson, and I appear for the prosecution.
May it please the court, counsel's name is Miss Chang, and I appear for the defence.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Patterson.
This is a case about Mr. Robert Marley taking and driving an ice cream van, without the owner's consent, and additionally having unlawfully obtained goods in his possession. The tests to be applied under section, firstly, 154 capital A of the Crimes Act, whether he took and drove this van and did so without the consent of the person in lawful possession. It is agreed, Your Honours, by both parties that Type A Rentals is in fact the lawful owner of the van in question. And the second charge, under section 527 capital C, that he had in his custody under subsection A, or alternatively under subsection C, on the premises, being the van, occupied by him, whether for his use or another, these stolen items, that, to the objective standard, were reasonably suspected to be stolen. Today you will hear from Detective Jackson as a witness for the prosecution. He is a detective who brought the claims today and will give evidence about what occurred that day in question, what he saw and found, who was driving the van, and what items were located. The facts adduced today will be applied to the relevant legal tests to show and prove to the criminal standard beyond all reasonable doubt that Mr. Marley did in fact commit these offences. Your Honours are invited to agree that Mr. Marley drove the ice cream van without Type A Rentals' consent. He was in control of it and had in its contents, some stolen musical items, which he, as an unemployed musician, had a reasonable suspicion had not been lawfully obtained. And thus, Your Honours may find as an assessment that Mr. Marley is guilty of these two offences. Unless Your Honours have any further questions, might I call the first prosecution witness?
Yes.
Call Mr. Marley. Detective Jackson.
Thank you, Ms. Patterson.
Thank you, Your Honours. Could you please tell the court your name?
Andrea Jackson,
How old are you?
30 years of age,
In which city do you live?
Sydney.
What's your occupation?
I'm a detective for the New South Wales Police.
How long have you been a detective?
I've been a detective for the past 3 years.
How does a detective rank?
Basically just up from a constable.
And how often do you get promoted?
It took me 8 years from first becoming a constable to now becoming a detective.
How do you know the accused?
From the events that day.
So I'll now take you to the morning of the 27th of March, earlier this year. Where were you?
We were in Harris Street in Ultimo.
What were you doing?
We were just driving in a northerly direction when we received a notification.
Before I go into that notification, you mentioned we. Who were you with?
I was with Constable DeChris.
And what were you wearing?
We were both in our police uniforms.
You mentioned a notification.
Yes.
What did it say?
We were advised that there was a person seen driving an ice cream vehicle and blaring loud music in the neighbourhood.
How did you respond?
We responded to go. We went to the scene because it's usual practice to. It seemed like relatively easy, just a neighbourhood disturbance. So we just went to the scene, as usual practice is. We were the closest people to the scene.
What did you find there?
When we got to the scene, we found the van eventually, and we pulled it over. And when I spoke with the driver, Mr. Marley.
Can I just stop you there?
Yeah.
You mentioned that you pulled the van over.
Yes.
Where exactly was this?
50 Cent Drive, Ultimo.
Certainly, and just continue from where you were.
So we alighted from ours and we walked over to speak with the driver.
Who was driving?
Mr. Marley was.
Who else was there?
Other than myself and the driver?
Yes.
I believe it was just us at this stage.
What did you do?
I had a conversation with Mr. Marley and I asked him to turn the music. People have complained.
How did he respond?
He asked. He never meant to disturb anyone. He came quite apologetic.
What else was said?
as per usual practice, we tried to clarify if he was the owner of the car, or if it was like, for example, his partner's car, if it was his friend's car, or who owned the vehicle, basically.
How did he respond to that question?
He told me that it was his friend's car.
What did he do next?
He told me that he was dropping his friend to the doctor because he had a limp. It came across a little bit suspicious because we'd had conversations back at the station about it's not every day you come across an ice cream van being stolen.
What exactly did you see to make you seem that it was suspicious?
Well, we saw obviously that it was an ice cream van, so that came across a lot suspicious because, as I said, it's not every day we see. So we noticed that, and he assured me that it belonged to his friend and that he was dropping his friend, some of his friends home.
Where was his friend?
We believe he got out of the vehicle and was waiting beside the vehicle.
What happened after this?
We instructed him that we were intending to search the vehicle and asked him if he had any response to that.
How did he respond?
He came across as though he didn't want us to search his vehicle. He didn't exactly say that he didn't want us to, but he told us that the glove compartment's locked, so is the trunk, he knows his rights, and that we would need a warrant.
What did you do after this?
I returned to the vehicle and searched the registration details in the police computer and confirmed that it was in fact the stolen vehicle that we had discussed earlier.
Now, let's turn to when you returned to the car door after finding the vehicle was in fact stolen. What did you do?
I told him that I had confirmed that it was stolen and that now I intended to search the vehicle. I asked him to alight and then we proceeded to search it.
What did you do to search it?
So my partner and I then searched the vehicle and then we found some stolen goods, well, what we presumed was stolen goods, and we were quite happy with.
What goods were they?
So we found a microphone, a Polaroid camera, a large speaker box, and a guitar.
What sort of size were these items?
Two of the four were smaller items, but the other two were quite large in size.
And where did you find them?
They were in the back of the van, and so they were sort of jammed in there because obviously it's an ice cream van. It's designed for the sale of and production of ice cream. So it was quite obvious that they were in there, despite trying to be hidden behind a poster.
What happened when you found them?
We then discussed with the driver that we'd found the stolen goods. He assured me that the van wasn't his and that, again, it belonged to his friend and he was just driving everyone home after a party.
What further conversation did you have, to be clear?
We then further asked him where he got the van and tried to further draw out information regarding that.
Was this conversation recorded?
Yes, I recorded it in my police notebook.
How sure are you that it's accurate?
I am extremely confident that it is accurate, as I copied it from the book into my statement.
Where was Constable DeChris at the time?
He was standing beside me at the time that we were having this conversation.
What was said after your discussion with the accused at the time?
So after the discussion, I then asked my partner to speak with the passenger, and when he went around the side to find the passenger, who we assumed, as I said, was staying next to the van, he had actually, he was unable to be found. So we assumed he walked away, but we did not notice.
Just taking you specifically to what was said in that conversation when you asked the accused, where did he say he was going?
He said he was going to the doctor's to drop his friend off.
What other details did he give?
He told me that he thought the doctor's name was Dre, and then later on, we asked him we asked him about his other friends because he's told us that he was dropping his friends home from a party.
What did he say about his other friends?
He told me he didn't remember where he dropped them off, which came across very suspicious from experience.
So after this, you've heard that he was on his way to the doctor's and he had some other friends that had been with him.
Yes.
Was anything else asked?
We asked him where his friend was firstly, and then where the doctor was that he was taking his friend to.
How did he respond to the questions?
He didn't know the answer to either, really. He basically blatantly said, "I don't know and I don't remember."
What did you make of that?
From experience, it came across as though he's now sort of guilty and not from experience speaking. It was quite indicative of guilt.
What do you mean from experience?
In previous cases where we've dealt with people who are a little bit loose with the truth, to put it, they ended up being guilty. So it was quite. It was following similar patterns.
Wondering, is there an objection to any of this material? Or
Your Honour, I object. The witness is giving opinion, please.
yeah. Oh, I won't allow that.
Certainly, Your Honours. What was specifically said by the accused at this time?
I don't know. When I asked him, he told me that he didn't know when I asked him about his friend. And then when I asked him about the doctor, he said, "You know what? I don't remember that either."
What did you do after this conversation?
So then I arrested Mr. Marley, placed him in the back of the vehicle, took him back to the station, wrote this statement, and my partner and I both signed it.
Just to be clear, who wrote the statement?
Myself and my partner signed it as well.
Who was that?
Mr. DeChris.
I have no further questions, but may please remain in the witness box for my learned friend or the judges who may have some questions for you.
Sure.
You work on the traffic unit, is that correct?
That is correct.
You were originally a police constable, is that correct?
Yes,
And you were then a detective.
that is correct.
But you have recently been reassigned to the traffic unit.
That is correct.
So you haven't been working in the traffic unit for long.
I believe that's the definition of recently.
Have you been working in the traffic unit for long?
Not particularly long.
On the 27th of March 2015, you were driving a police car that had just been commissioned, is that correct?
That is correct.
And your role on that day was to test its various systems.
That was one of my roles.
And that was the task that you were allocated on that day. Is that correct?
Yes.
However, when you heard of the ice cream van, you volunteered to investigate that instead.
As I said, it was usual practice as we were the closest vehicle to the scene.
However, that was not your allocated task on that day.
I am a police officer after all. I can't just determine not to attend a scene.
Can you please answer the question whether that was your allocated task on that day?
Can you restate the question? The original question, sorry.
You went to investigate the ice cream van, although that was not your allocated task on that day.
That is correct.
Now, as a police officer, a record is kept of how many charges that each police officer lays, is that correct?
Well, yes, because we put our name to it at the end of the day, so there is a trail.
And statistics of how many charges are made are collected each month, is that correct?
Objection, Your Honours. Relevance of the question being put to the prosecution witness?
What's the relevance?
Your Honour, the defence submits this evidence is relevant as it goes towards possible motives behind the charges that were laid on that day.
Well, allow it, but you've got short shift.
Certainly, Your Honour. Within these statistics that are collated each month, it would be an achievement to have high statistics, is that correct?
I don't know, that's above my head.
Now, moving to the events when you first came across Mr. Marley. You pulled over his van. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And Mr. Marley was playing loud music.
Yes, that is correct.
And he apologised for playing that loud music.
Yes.
And that was the reason that you pulled over the van.
Yes, due to the disturbance because
Because
there
of the loud music.
was an ice cream van blaring loud music in the neighbourhood.
You very quickly thought that that van was suspicious and stolen, didn't you?
Yes.
Although you were pulling it over for playing loud music.
But then, upon seeing the van, we believed it was stolen, as we had earlier discussed that week about a stolen police van at the precinct.
You saw a passenger in that van, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And you described that passenger as looking shady.
Yes.
And you thought, as you discussed when asked by my learned friend, that the driver of that vehicle looked like other people, looked to be the type of person that would be charged for a crime.
I don't believe I said that.
You thought he looked like the type of person who might be a criminal.
I never said that.
You deny that. You stated that earlier.
Yes.
Now, the passenger of this van got out, didn't he?
I do believe I said that, yes.
But you didn't speak to him.
Not at the time, because it was usual practice, as the driver was ultimately responsible for the vehicle. It was a priority to deal with the issue at hand, as they were in control of the vehicle.
Neither you nor your colleague spoke to the passenger of the van when he got out of the van.
That is correct.
And neither you nor your colleague decided to follow that passenger.
No, because we believed he was just getting out and staying next to the van.
So you believed that he was standing next to the van.
That is correct.
May I draw your attention to paragraph 6 of the statement that you made,
Yes.
where you state that he got out of the passenger side and walked away.
Away as in out of my vision.
So you saw him walk away,
I saw him walk out of my vision.
but you did not follow him.
No, because we presumed he was walking to stand next to the van and lean against it.
So you presumed that he was still there, although you saw him walk away and you could not see
Away
him.
from my vision.
So you state that he was out of your vision and walking away, yet you still thought he was next to the van.
He walked away from obviously he got out of the vehicle, and then he walked out of my vision, so one would presume behind the van, because I'm on the driver's side.
When you walked up to the van, you initially said, "All right now, fellas," to which Mr. Marley replied, "Yeah."
Incorrect.
You said, all right, now I'm going to need you to turn the music down and I want you to come over here."
Incorrect. I did ask them to turn down the music, but that is the only part of that statement that is correct.
Now, Mr. Marley said to you, "Why do I need to get out of the car? I haven't done anything wrong."
That is incorrect.
To which you stated, "I know what you've done. Why not make it easy on yourself and just fess up now? I'm going to break this down for a few seconds. You've been on your baddest behaviour and we're not happy here."
Incorrect.
Objection, Your Honours. It's a rather long-winded question for my witness. Wonder if it might be rephrased.
Do you want it broken up into sections?
Certainly, Your Honours.
Well, can you divide it up into parts instead of one long proposition being put to the
Certainly, Your
witness?
Honour.
Right.
You said to Mr. Marley that he knew what he'd done and that he should just fess up now.
Incorrect.
And you said that he'd been on his baddest behaviour and that you were not happy.
Incorrect.
And he said, "What's going on? Don't punish me with brutality. Just talk to me so that you can see."
Incorrect.
Now, your response was to state that you knew what was going on and that you knew that he'd taken this car for a joyride. Is that correct?
Incorrect.
You stated to Mr. Marley that it would bump your stats up so high this month to charge him.
Incorrect.
Mr. Marley stated to you that there was no way that this was a stolen vehicle as it was his friend's vehicle. Is that correct?
Can you ask the beginning part of that question again, please?
Mr. Marley stated to you that it was his friend's vehicle.
He did on a number of occasions try to assure me that the vehicle belonged to his friend.
And he stated that he was taking his friend to the doctor.
Yes, after dropping a number of his other friends off.
And he stated that the doctor was nearby and the doctor's name was M. Gay.
Incorrect.
And that his friend had injured himself.
He mentioned that his friend had a limp, but that's all that he mentioned.
You said to Mr. Marley, "Stop making tired excuses, I'm going to talk to my partner and check the van for stolen property," didn't you?
I never said that.
Now, after this initial conversation, you then went to speak with your colleague, is that correct?
No, I did return to the vehicle and searched its plates.
Yes, but before that you went to discuss with your colleague.
No.
And you were glaring at Mr. Marley when you were talking to your colleague.
No.
You then went to Mr. Marley and said, "Mate, I was right, this van is stolen, got ya, you've got a few problems now, son."
I never said any of that.
You then went to search the van, is that correct?
Yes, so following discovering that it was in fact the stolen ice cream van that we had discussed earlier, we then proceeded, we informed the driver, Mr. Marley, that it had been confirmed as stolen and that we did intend to search and we would need him to alight the vehicle.
You had no warrant to search at that point, did you?
No.
And you hadn't determined who the owner of that vehicle was at that point?
No, but we had determined that it was in fact stolen.
You knew the vehicle was stolen, yes?
That is correct.
You didn't know who the owner was?
No.
And you didn't approach the passenger of that vehicle to find out if it was his vehicle?
Not at that time.
You then searched the van?
That is correct.
And you found items in that car? In that van?
Yes, we did.
And you thought that those items were stolen?
Reasonably presumed, yes.
Although there was nothing to suggest that?
They were attempted to be hidden behind a poster.
And you did not know who the owner of those items were?
No.
Once you had searched the van, you then approached Mr. Marley a second time and stated that it was full of stolen property, didn't you?
No, we told him that we had found stolen property.
So you had presumed the property was stolen by this point when you just found the property?
Who tries to hide their own property in their vehicle.
So can you please answer the question, did you presume at this point, upon initially finding the property, that it was stolen?
Yes.
And Mr. Marley stated to you that some of it was his?
No, he dodged the question altogether and he assured me again that the van was not his and it belonged to his friend, and he was just driving everyone home after a party.
Did Mr. Marley state to you that there were shoes and a broken keyboard in there, which he owned and had bought yesterday?
No.
And you stated you found a microphone, a Polaroid camera, a speaker box and a Big Boy branded guitar?
That is correct.
And he stated to you they are probably Marshall's or his friends?
He never said that belonged to Marshall or his friends.
But you never went to determine whether they were owned by the other passengers from that van?
Correct.
Your Honour, I have no further questions.
Yeah. Thank you.
That is the case for the prosecution.
Thank you, Ms. Patterson. The witness may step down. Yes, Ms. Cheng.
Your Honour, this is a case regarding Mr. Marley, a man innocently trying to help an injured friend when he was abruptly stopped by Ms. Jackie Som, who too readily charged him for offences without sufficient evidence to do so. The defence submits that neither of the elements of the two offences charged have been satisfied on the facts. The defence submits that under section 154A, Mr. Marley is not guilty of taking conveyance without the consent of the owner, as he does not fulfil the mens rea elements of this offence, and furthermore was taking the van due to necessity of doing so. Regarding the offence of unlawful possession under section 257C1A, the defence submits that Mr. Marley had no knowledge of the goods being located in the van required for possession, and furthermore that these goods cannot be reasonably suspected of being stolen or otherwise unlawfully obtained. The burden of proof rests on the prosecution to prove both the actus reus and mens rea elements beyond all reasonable doubt. Shortly, I will call Mr. Marley to the witness box, who will tell you of how on the night in question he was driving an injured friend to the doctors in a vehicle which he thought belonged to Mr. Marshall Mathers. He will discuss how he had no knowledge of the various items found in this van, and that they were typical items which might be expected to be found and owned by the people who he was associated with. If Your Honour has no further questions, I would like to call the defence witness, Mr. Marley, to the witness box.
I know we're suspending disbelief, so thank you, Mr. Marley. Ms. Jing.
Can you please state your name and occupation for the court?
My name is Robert Marley. I am a musician.
On the 26th of March 2015, what were you doing that evening?
I attended a small party at a friend's house, Miss Melissa Elliott's.
Can you please describe that party for the court?
It was attended by quite a few people, mostly fellow musicians.
At what point did you decide to leave that party?
I decided to leave the party early morning the next day.
And what was your reason for leaving?
A good friend of mine, Marshall Mathers, tripped down a set of stairs and hurt his ankle. So he asked me if I could drive him to the doctor.
And what was your response?
I said I'd be happy to drive him and his 5 friends home, but I realised that I didn't have a car.
How was that resolved?
He said that he drove his ice cream van to the party and suggested that we use it to drive to the doctors and take his friends home. He also said that we could use the speakers to play music inside the car.
And what did you think of that proposition?
I thought it was quite unusual that my friend Marshall Mathers had an ice cream van when he was a lawyer.
Can you please describe the
Times are tough for the profession.
Can you please describe the character of Mr. Marshall?
He is a very honest and trustworthy man. I have known him for quite a while.
So what happened next?
I helped everyone into the ice cream van and drove off.
And where did you go?
I cannot remember exactly where I dropped each of his friends home because I don't drive regularly and I don't know my way around. These friends were shouting directions at me as I dropped people off.
Where were you going when you were pulled over by the police?
I was dropping the last of Marshall's friends off when he told me that he would direct me to the doctors.
Which doctors were you going to?
We were going to the all-night doctors in Surrey Hills.
What initial interaction did you have with the police?
Marshall was in the process of directing me when we were pulled over. We had the music up pretty loud. I apologized to the police officer, but she seemed to just have it in for me.
Can you please describe the first conversation that you had with Ms. Jackson?
She said, "All right now, fellas." I said, "Yeah." She said, "All right, all right, all right. Now I'm going to need you to turn the music down and I want you to come over here." I said, "Why do I need to get out of the car? I haven't done anything wrong." She said, "You know what you've done. Why not make it easy on yourself and just fess up now? I'm going to break this down for a few seconds. You've been on your baddest behavior and we're not happy here." I said, "Hey, whoa, what's going on? Don't punish me with brutality. Just talk to me so you can see."
At this point, had you done anything which would lead her to have that reaction?
No, I did not.
Can you describe the rest of that conversation for the court?
She said, "I know what's going on. You've taken this car for a joyride and we caught you. This will bump my stats up so high this month." I said, "Joyride? No way, it's my friend's van." And at this point I gestured to the passenger seat, which I was surprised to see that Marshall was gone. I continued, and was driving him to the doctor. There's an all-night doctor somewhere around here. I think the doctor's name is M. Gay. She said, "Stop making tired excuses. I'm going to talk to my partner, then check this van for stolen property."
What did the police then do?
The police then left and went to speak with her partner. They kept glaring at me while they talked to each other. Marshall disappeared. I hadn't seen the police ever speak to him or even look for him.
When Ms. Jackson returned, what did she say?
She said, "Mate, I was right. This van is stolen. Gotcha. You've got a few problems now, son."
And what did the officers do next?
The officers then searched the van. I kept telling them it wasn't my van. I was just driving it because Marshall had hurt his foot, but they will never listen to me.
Can you describe the conversation with you and Ms. Jackson after the van was searched?
She said, "I was right. This van is full of stolen property. What do you have to say about that?" I said, "Some of the stuff is mine from the party. My shoes, they're the gator shoes with the Velcro, and there's a broken keyboard. I bought them yesterday afternoon at Vinnie's. They cost me like 99 cents. I didn't know there was anything else." She said, "We found a microphone, Polaroid camera, a speaker box, and a big boy branded guitar." I said, "Those are probably Marshall's or his friends, the ones I told you I was driving home."
Why did you think these items would belong to Marshall or his friends?
I thought they would belong to Marshall or his friends because they are common items usually associated with musicians.
What else happened during this encounter with the police?
I tried to explain that I didn't know anything about this stuff. They asked me some questions which I cannot remember the precise details of because I was in shock. This was the first time I've ever been in trouble with the law.
I have no further questions for you, Mr. Marshall, but would you please remain in the witness box for my learned friend or the judge your name?
Thank you, Your Honours. Your name is Robert Marley, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
You're 29 years old, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
You gave a statement to police on the 22nd of April, didn't you?
I do not recall the statement on the 22nd of April.
The statement, I believe you have a copy of, that you wrote after you were charged with this offence?
Yes.
You know the statement?
Yes.
And you wrote it yourself?
Yes, I did.
And you signed it as true? Believing it to be true?
Yes.
True to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
And you stated your occupation as a musician,
Yes.
but you're also unemployed, aren't you?
Yes.
So you stated that your occupation is also unemployed.
Yes.
You don't have a steady income then, do you?
Sorry, could you please repeat the question?
Certainly. You don't have a steady income, do you?
No, I do not.
And you don't own a car,
I do not.
but you do like music, you're a musician.
Yes, I do.
On the 26th of March this year, you were at a friend's house, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
It was Melissa Elliott's.
Yes.
It was a small party, wasn't it?
Yes.
Did many people attend?
Quite a few people.
Yet it was a small party.
What do you define by small?
I put it to you, as you mentioned in your statement, it was a small party.
Yes.
Yet there were many people in attendance.
Do you mean small as in the number, the number of people or the size of the actual party.
Did many people attend?
Quite a few people.
So quite a few people attended. And that morning, your friend Marshall Mathers hurt his ankle, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
He's your good friend, isn't he?
Yes.
And he wanted you to drive him to the doctor's, didn't he?
Yes.
And he offered you to drive his ice cream van, didn't he?
Yes.
You didn't know he had a car though, did you?
No, I did not.
You didn't think he had a car at that time.
I did think he had a car because he was a lawyer.
But you didn't know he had a car.
I did not know that he had an ice cream van.
You also thought it was unusual, didn't you, that he had an ice cream van?
Yes.
You were a bit surprised, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
Yet you didn't question him about it, did you?
No, because he's a good friend.
You didn't ask him when he got it?
No.
You didn't ask him why he chose an ice cream van?
No, I did not.
You didn't ask him whether it had a warrant?
No, I did not.
And you didn't ask him how long he'd had it for?
No, my prime concern was getting him to the doctors.
I put it to you again, you didn't ask him how long he'd had it for?
No, I did not.
You just took it and drove it without knowing these things, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
You agreed to take Marshall along with 5 other friends, didn't you?
Yes.
So there were 7 of you in total?
Yes.
And you helped everyone into the van, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
You saw them all hop in.
Yes.
And you saw where they were seated?
Not precisely.
Did everyone have a seat?
Yes, they did.
And a seatbelt?
I cannot recall whether or not they put on a seatbelt.
Not whether they put it on, but whether they were in a seat with a seatbelt.
Yes.
So in this ice cream van, there were 7 seats with seatbelts.
I do not recall the precise interiors of an ice cream van.
Yet you did help them into the van, as you said in your statement.
Yes, I did.
So you saw some of the inside of the van when you helped them in.
Yes, I did.
At that time, you say Marshall had hurt his ankle, hadn't he?
Yes.
Yet you didn't drop him off first, did you?
No.
You dropped off all the other people first, didn't you?
Yes.
And in fact, you ended up dropping him off last. That's where you were going.
Yes.
There was no urgency then, was there?
No.
You couldn't say it was a necessity to get him to the doctor, was it?
It was a necessity. It wasn't urgent, but it was a necessity.
But not a necessity enough to place that over importance of dropping your friends off home.
No, Marshall asked me to drop his friends off first.
I put it to you again, it wasn't more important than dropping the friends off home.
Not according to Marshall.
So you decided to drop the friends home before you dropped Marshall at the doctor's.
Yes.
When the police stopped you, you were in the driver's seat, weren't you?
Yes.
You'd been driving the van.
Yes.
And it was in the morning, wasn't it?
Yes.
That same day. And the van's music was up loud, was it?
Yes.
And she asked you to turn the music down, the detective.
Yes.
And she asked you to get out of the car.
No, I do not recall her Yes, I do.
You do recall her asking you to get out of the van. But you didn't want to get out of the van, did you?
No, I did not.
Rather than following the detective, you argued, why do I need to get out, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
The police officer asked where you were taking your friend, didn't they?
Yes.
And you pointed to the passenger seat.
Yes.
But Marshall wasn't there, was he?
No, he wasn't.
He had a sore ankle,
Yes.
yet somehow he'd walked away.
Yes.
And she asked you where you were driving him, didn't she?
Yes, she did.
And you said to the doctor.
Yes.
You said something else about that doctor, didn't you?
Precisely.
You said that it was an all-night doctor,
Yes.
but this was daytime, wasn't it?
Yes.
It was in the morning.
Yes.
The detective said that she would check the van for stolen property, didn't she?
Yes.
You didn't want her to, though, did you?
I don't see why she needed to.
You didn't see why she needed to, and you didn't want her to, did you?
No.
And you said that they needed a warrant to search it, didn't they?
I do not recall a warrant.
You don't recall them having a warrant, but you mentioned that you thought they should have one, didn't you?
Yes.
They did search it, though, didn't they?
Yes.
And you said that some of the stuff was yours from the party.
Yes.
And you said you didn't know there was anything else in there.
I know that they were my stuff. They were my stuff in the van.
Might I remind you, in your statement, at paragraph 16, you mentioned, I didn't know there was anything else, didn't you?
Yes.
Yet we've previously heard that you saw the inside of the van when you were helping your friends get into it,
I
didn't
did
you?
not see the precise details of the inside of the van.
Just some of the inside of the van.
Very briefly.
The police found a guitar, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
And a speaker box,
Yes.
and a microphone, and a Polaroid camera, didn't they?
Yes.
Ice cream vans usually sell ice cream, don't they?
Yes, they do.
These are not typical items to be found in an ice cream van, are they?
Yes.
And you said you thought that they were marshals.
Or his friends.
But Marshall's a lawyer, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
He's not a musician.
No, he's not.
And you thought, I put it to you, that the property might not be Marshall's, didn't you?
But it could be his friends.
You didn't know how long he'd had the van for,
No, I do not.
but you knew that he drove it to the party that night.
He had an ice cream van with him.
Not his friends, it was his van.
I do not know the precise owner, the actual owner of the van. I just thought it was Marshall's.
And you thought that the items in it may somehow have been someone else's.
It could have been his friends.
The detective asked you where your friends were, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
But you didn't remember.
No.
And you didn't know where Marshall was, did you?
At that point,
Yes, at that point when you were asked.
no.
And you didn't know where the doctor was, did you?
The doctor was in Surrey Hills.
I put it to you that you said you don't remember where the doctor was that you were taking your friend.
Not the precise location, but I know that the doctor is in
You
Surrey
didn't know the
Hills.
precise location of where the doctor
Somewhere in
was.
Surrey Hills.
You didn't know where precisely the doctor was, and you didn't know where your friends were, and you didn't know where Marshall had gone, did you?
I do know where the doctor is. The doctor is in Surrey Hills.
This doctor in Surrey Hills, as we've heard, is an all-night doctor, isn't it?
Yes.
And you know that there are other doctors in Sydney that are open in the day.
I do not know. Marshall referred me.
You do not know that there are other doctors in Sydney.
Yes, there are other doctors in Sydney, but Marshall referred me to this specific doctor.
I have no further questions. This case is ultimately about Mr. Marley taking and driving a stolen vehicle without consent of its true owner. And the ice cream van was in his control as he drove it, and thus he had in his personal custody unlawfully obtained goods. Given that we've heard somewhat differing versions of events from each witness, to ascertain whether the offence elements are in fact made out, one witness must be believed over the other. And for the following reasons, Your Honours, the more credible witness is that of the prosecution, Detective Jackson. For the following reasons. Detective Jackson is a respected police detective with many years of service to her name. She's given a consistent account of events. She has a lack of bias, given that she has no motive for promotion, as this has already just occurred in her work. And all police procedures were followed. In contrast, the defence witness, Mr. Marley, with regards to him, several doubts have arisen, given his demeanour with some sometimes evasive answers, initially forgetting that he made a statement even, contradicting certain events such as seeing the inside of the van, but not apparently the large musical items within it, noticing specifically that there were 7 seats with seat belts, but not noticing anything else in the van, having a good friend, Marshall, but not being aware that he owned such a distinctive vehicle, and not knowing, supposedly, that these extra items were in the van at the time. For those reasons, it is clear the defence witness is somewhat troublesome and should not be believed in this instance, and I invite your honours to favour the evidence given by the detective as more credible. Your honours, an unemployed musician was found to have, in the premises of a van he was driving, several musical instruments, namely the stolen property. That is more than a coincidence, and furthermore, the van was in possession of his good friend, who he took it from, yet he claims he has absolutely no idea that his friend did not, in fact, own the van, which seems also unlikely. It is not for the police to identify the true owner, as it was clearly agreed that Type A Rentals was the owner, not Marshall and not Mr. Marley. Furthermore, looking to evidence we've heard today, it was daytime and someone was injured, yet Mr. Marley chose to not take the injured person to the doctor first, thereby undermining the supposed necessity of the need to take him to the doctors, and furthermore, sticking to the need to take him to an all-night doctor's when this was in fact occurring in daytime. Highly suspicious, Your Honours. Furthermore, from the detective we have heard that Mr. Marley did not want the van to be searched and seemed unsure as to whether the police would be able, in fact, to search the van, and was intending that they would not be able to do so. Sadly, these things happen. People sometimes take items that are not theirs, use vehicles that are not in true ownership. It happens, it shouldn't, but it does. Given the evidence we've heard today, Your Honours, you may now agree that the elements of both offences under both sections are in fact made out. There cannot be a reasonable doubt that in fact the vehicle was taken and driven without the consent of Type A vehicles, thereby fulfilling the requisite elements of section 154 capital A. And furthermore, under section 527 capital C, unlawfully obtained goods were in the van, in its premises, being controlled by Mr. Marley. And one could not, this may reasonably, Your Honours, be suspected of being stolen or otherwise lawfully obtained to the objective standard. Unless Your Honours have any further questions.
Unlawfully obtained, I think you mean.
Certainly, unlawfully obtained, Your Honours. Unless Your Honours have any further questions, that concludes my submissions.
Your Honour, today you've heard from 2 witnesses. Firstly, Ms. Jackie Son, a constable recently reassigned to the traffic unit, who chose to pursue Mr. Marley and to readily charge him for offences which were unsubstantiated on the facts of this case. Then you heard from Mr. Marley, a man innocently attempting to help a friend when he was stopped and had his vehicle searched without a warrant. The defence submits that the evidence presented today falls far short of satisfying the mens rea and actus reus elements of conveyance of a vehicle and also of unlawfully obtaining goods. The context of this case involves a constable who was recently reassigned to the traffic unit, in which she had little experience. She was allocated to a different task on the day in question than to investigate this van, but chose to pursue it with but chose to pursue it on this day. She also had a motive to make charges in order to boost her monthly statistics recorded by the police department. The defence submits that all of these factors undermine Ms. Jacuson's credibility in giving evidence. Furthermore, Ms. Jacuson had some level of bias as she initially described Mr. Marshall and his partner as shady and the type of people who she would expect may be criminals. She also suspected that the van was stolen before any evidence was given of this and before she found out that the vehicle did not belong to Mr. Marley or the passenger. Regarding the claims, the offences at hand, the defence submits that conveyance of a vehicle was not proved, that there has not been sufficient evidence to prove this beyond reasonable doubt. In particular, evidence has not been provided that Mr. Marley had knowledge that this vehicle was taken without consent. Evidence has been provided today that Mr. Marley believed the vehicle was Mr. Marshall's, and furthermore, even if the actus reus and mens rea elements are proven, the defence submits that Mr. Marley was acting in necessity as he was attempting to help an injured friend and take him to the doctor. The defence also submits that Mr. Marley is not guilty of unlawful possession regarding the musical items found in his van, as the prosecution has been unable to prove that Mr. Marley had knowledge of these items. They also gave no reason as to why these items would reasonably be considered to be stolen upon finding them. The logical conclusion from the evidence presented is that these musical items were left in the van by the passengers who had recently been dropped off, and that they were not stolen items. The defence submits that there is insufficient evidence to prove either of these offences beyond reasonable doubt, and urges the court not to convict Mr. Marley for crimes that he did not commit. That is the case for the defence.